She never chased his wealth, yet he accused her of wearing a mask built from lies. When the truth finally surfaced, it shattered the world he thought he controlled. Now he must face the woman he misjudged, the pain he caused, and the secret that could destroy every belief he once held. Only one of them will walk out healed. She entered his life quietly, yet from the first moment he looked at her, suspicion tightened in his chest, as if beauty itself were a trap designed to deceive powerful men like him. He observed her every move with cold precision, convinced she approached him with intentions polished by greed and hidden behind a gentle smile that felt far too sincere to trust. Rumors in the company grew louder, feeding his doubts as colleagues whispered that she must have a motive, because no one looked at a CEO like that without wanting something in return. He confronted her with sharp words, masking his insecurity with authority, demanding to know what she truly wanted from him and why she kept appearing at the wrong places at the wrong times. She trembled but refused to look away, insisting she never sought his money. Yet he only heard what echoed his fears, not the quiet truth fighting to reach him. Late at night, he replayed their conversations, convinced she was hiding something, unaware that the secret she protected had nothing to do with profit, status, or manipulation. His assistant warned him gently that he might be misinterpreting her intentions, but he brushed off the suggestion, claiming experience had taught him to recognize masks long before they slipped. Despite his distrust, he felt an unexplainable pull toward her, a magnetic force that irritated him because it made him question whether the danger he sensed was real or imagined. Each time she walked into a room, his heartbeat hardened, torn between desire and suspicion, torn between reaching for her and pushing her away to maintain his control. She kept her distance, sensing his hostility, yet she never stopped treating him with the quiet respect she believed everyone deserved, no matter their rank or wealth. He noticed the exhaustion behind her eyes, a heaviness she tried to hide, but he mistook it as guilt, not knowing it came from a burden she'd carried long before they met. Their tension grew sharper during a late meeting when she accidentally touched his hand, and he recoiled as if burned, leaving her stunned and silently wounded. Rumors reached her ears, whispering that he believed she wanted his fortune, and though the words hurt deeply, she remained dignified, refusing to defend herself against lies. She considered resigning, but something held her back, a promise she made long ago to someone she loved, a promise that tied her fate to his world regardless of his opinion of her. One morning, she found him watching her from across the lobby, his expression unreadable, as though he was searching for cracks in her soul instead of truth in her eyes. He noticed how she comforted a crying intern in the hallway, offering her coat without hesitation, and for a brief second, his certainty trembled, though he forced himself to ignore it. When he learned she volunteered anonymously at a small community shelter, he grew irritated, wondering if it was another act designed to manipulate public sympathy. She overheard him questioning her character during a meeting, and though every word pierced her deeply, she composed herself, refusing to let anyone see the fracture forming inside. His accusations finally broke her silence, and she confronted him with trembling fury, asking why he believed the worst of her when she had given him no reason to doubt her. Her voice cracked as she revealed she wanted nothing from him, but he dismissed it as desperation, unaware he was crushing the last thread of trust she held for him. After their confrontation, she avoided him completely, leaving him oddly unsettled, as if her absence exposed something hollow inside him he had never noticed before. His irritation intensified when he caught himself searching for her in every corridor, unable to understand why the sight of her empty desk made his chest feel strangely tight. One late evening, he found a forgotten file on her desk containing documents she had been working on in secret, and what he discovered inside ignited the first spark of doubt in his assumptions. The file contained letters, medical reports, and a photograph that made his hands go cold, revealing a truth so far from his suspicions that he felt the ground shift beneath him. He stared at the photograph, unable to believe the fragile life she had protected silently. A life that explained her urgency, her secrecy, and the exhaustion he had misjudged as manipulation. The letters revealed debts, medical bills, and a past filled with sacrifices she made for someone else. Yet he had accused her of scheming for his fortune. He felt a sudden, crushing guilt that clawed at his chest, realizing he had spent weeks punishing her with suspicion while she had only ever shown loyalty and kindness. Every late night he had watched her, convinced of her intentions, now returned to haunt him as he replayed her actions in light of the truth he had ignored. His heart throbbed with shame, knowing the words he had spoken, the harsh looks, and the cold distance had wounded her deeply, maybe permanently, for a misunderstanding he could never take back. She had always hidden her pain to protect him from distraction, to ensure her mission and related to wealth remained secret, and he had accused her of greed all along. The reality hit him with unbearable clarity. He had misjudged her entirely, and the love he felt now mingled with guilt that threatened to suffocate him. He remembered the small gestures she had made, the unpaid lunch she had bought him, the coffee she brought without asking, and the way she listened without judgment. Now they screamed honesty. He wanted to reach her to beg forgiveness, yet he feared his pride would repel her, afraid she would never see the sincerity behind his remorse. The office felt suffocating. each familiar corner now a reminder of his mistakes and the cruelty of jumping to conclusions without knowing the truth. She had always been careful to never use his money, never ask for anything, but he had interpreted generosity and humility as calculated manipulation. Every whispered rumor, every glance he had misread, and every misinterpreted act now converged into a painful clarity that pierced through his ego and arrogance. He realized that understanding her life required empathy, which he had squandered in favor of suspicion, leaving him with nothing but regret and a desire to undo what was done. The photograph he held in trembling hands depicted someone she loved and had cared for secretly, someone who depended on her sacrifices, a truth he had never considered. He wondered how she had carried such a burden alone, all while facing his cold stares and harsh assumptions, and the weight of that realization almost broke him. For the first time, he questioned himself, not just his assumptions about her, but every decision clouded by pride and ignorance, which had nearly destroyed their fragile connection. The guilt was unbearable. He could feel the hours of mistrust crushing him, knowing she deserved none of the accusations he had thrown at her. He remembered how she never retaliated, never plotted, never asked for anything in return, and yet his mind had built a story of greed entirely out of fear and ego. Her absence gnawed at him like a silent punishment, the void she left in the office reflecting the emptiness of his own conscience. He wanted to explain, to tell her everything he now understood, yet words felt inadequate to repair the months of doubt and pain he had inflicted. The truth was heavier than any fortune he could possess, heavier than his pride, heavier than his control over the empire he had built. She had lived a truth so noble he had failed to see. He sat alone, the photograph still in his hands, the letters spread around him like confessions he had ignored for far too long, each page a mirror of his misjudgment. He could no longer deny the depth of her integrity, her silent suffering, and her unwavering loyalty despite the storm of his baseless accusations. He had loved her, in his own misguided way. But love without understanding had led him to cruelty, and now he faced the consequences of his misjudgment. Night fell outside, and he realized that nothing would erase the hurt, nothing would instantly restore trust, yet he vowed silently to try, knowing he must confront his errors to heal what he had broken. He rehearsed his apology countless times, knowing that words alone could never fully convey the depth of his remorse. Yet he could no longer hide from the truth he had finally seen. Every step toward her felt like walking through fire, each corridor and office chair a reminder of the mistrust he had sown so carelessly in the past weeks. When he finally saw her from afar, her posture straight, her expression calm, he realized how much strength she carried, silently enduring his false accusations without ever retaliating. The sight of her resilience pierced his heart, a mixture of admiration and shame, making him wish he could turn back time and erase every harsh word spoken. He noticed the small details he had ignored before, the way she tucked her hair behind her ear, the soft sigh when she focused, the subtle kindness in her gestures toward everyone around her. The letters, once spread on his desk, now felt like a roadmap to her soul, revealing the sacrifices, burdens, and love she had hidden behind layers of modesty and silence. He imagined the nights she had spent worrying, planning, and giving, all unseen, all unnoticed, while he constructed an image of greed that never existed in her heart. For the first time, he understood that trust is not given blindly, it must be observed, respected, and earned through actions, not assumptions or hearsay. His pride wanted to shield him, but shame forced him forward, urging him to admit his mistakes and confront the reality of the pain he had caused someone he truly cared for. She moved with quiet dignity, unaware of the turmoil he felt inside, and he realized that he had mistaken composure for cunning, patience for calculation, and care for manipulation. The realization settled heavily in his chest. He had judged her without evidence, letting fear and arrogance guide his actions instead of reason and empathy. He thought about the countless moments he had misread, the times he had doubted her, and the nights spent imagining schemes that never existed. Each memory now carried a sting of guilt, a constant reminder that love without understanding can be cruel, and misunderstanding without clarification can be devastating. He recalled the day she had helped the intern despite his disapproval, her act of kindness dismissed as manipulation, yet now it shone brightly as proof of her genuine heart. The photograph in his hand symbolized a truth he had refused to see. She had lived a life of silent devotion and sacrifice, a life entirely disconnected from the motives he had imagined. He understood that the hurt he caused would not vanish immediately, that forgiveness must be earned, and that rebuilding trust required humility, patience, and unwavering sincerity. He wanted to reach her, to speak, to confess, yet fear gripped him, the fear that his words could never repair the damage, that some wounds were too deep for apologies alone. Her absence from the usual meeting spots gnawed at him, a silent rebuke, making him aware of the emptiness he had created through his unfounded suspicions. He revisited every conversation, every glance, every moment he had misjudged her, dissecting his actions and realizing how fully he had misunderstood the intentions of someone he cared about. The office felt different now, quieter, heavier, and more revealing of his misjudgment, each familiar object a witness to the mistakes of his heart and mind. He knew he could no longer protect himself with pride. The truth demanded confrontation. The truth demanded acknowledgement, and the truth demanded his sincere efforts to make amends. She had survived the storm of his accusations, carrying herself with grace, never showing the cracks in her composure, yet the weight of his suspicion had left invisible scars. He realized that the depth of her character could never be measured by wealth or status, and his shallow assumptions had blinded him to the reality of her extraordinary integrity. The thought of her suffering because of him burned with an intensity that no apology could immediately extinguish. Yet he understood that he must begin the journey toward redemption. With trembling resolve, he took a deep breath and stepped into the hallway where she usually passed, ready to face the consequences, ready to show the sincerity of his regret, and ready to rebuild what he had almost destroyed. He found her in the quiet corner of the office lounge, her expression serene yet alert, and he realized the first step toward healing would be to speak with honesty, humility, and courage. His voice shook as he approached, each word carefully chosen, each pause weighed with remorse, knowing that this moment could either mend or break the fragile thread between them. "I was wrong," he whispered, almost to himself, before finally meeting her gaze, seeing the calm patience she carried despite the storm he had unleashed. She listened, her eyes unreadable, yet he felt the weight of her quiet judgment and the silent acknowledgement that forgiveness would take time, effort, and sincerity. He explained every assumption, every suspicion, every moment of misunderstanding, admitting how pride, fear, and insecurity had blinded him to the truth she had lived every day. Her lips pressed together, a subtle sign of resistance and consideration, and he knew that she weighed his words carefully, deciding whether they carried authenticity or empty regret. He showed her the letters, the photograph, the hidden burdens she had protected, each item a testament to the reality he had ignored and the life she had endured alone. As he spoke, he noticed a flicker of emotion in her eyes, something between pain, relief, and cautious hope, the first crack in the wall of distance that had grown between them. He knelt slightly, not in supplication, but in acknowledgement of the imbalance he had created, signaling that he was ready to rebuild the trust he had destroyed. She finally spoke, her voice steady but soft, recounting the sacrifices she had carried, the kindness she had offered, and the endurance required to survive his misjudgment. Hearing her truth pierced him deeply, the sound of integrity so powerful it forced him to confront the weight of his own arrogance and ignorance. He realized that love, misunderstood, can be as painful as betrayal, and that the path to redemption is measured by patience, humility, and unwavering effort. He extended a hand, not as a plea, but as an offer to reconcile, a silent acknowledgement that he had learned the cost of misjudgment and the value of seeing with clarity. She studied him, weighing his gestures, his words, and the sincerity in his eyes. Then slowly, deliberately, she reached out to meet his hand halfway. The connection was tentative, fragile, yet it carried a silent promise that mistakes could be confronted, that understanding could be achieved, and that hearts could begin to heal. He realized that trust must be nurtured, not demanded, and that the journey ahead required patience, respect, and consistent honesty from both of them. They walked together through the office, side by side, not as equals restored overnight, but as two people willing to rebuild what had been broken through empathy and courage. Every glance, every small smile, every subtle gesture now carried meaning, each step forward a small victory over the shadow of doubt and misjudgment. He vowed silently to honor her sacrifices, to never let assumptions override truth, and to nurture the connection that had nearly been destroyed by fear and pride. She, in turn, allowed herself to trust cautiously, aware of the fragile thread between them but willing to give him the chance to prove his sincerity through consistent actions. The office, once heavy with tension, now seemed lighter, filled with the quiet possibility of redemption, understanding, and a love tempered by adversity. He no longer saw her through suspicion, but through compassion and respect, realizing that the true test of love is seeing beyond fear and pride to the essence of another's heart. They shared a quiet moment of understanding, words unnecessary, the space between them filled with acknowledgement, remorse, and the first hints of renewed trust. As they parted for the day, a subtle but powerful shift had occurred. What had begun as accusation and doubt transformed into reflection, learning, and the fragile beginnings of healing. He knew the road ahead would be long, that forgiveness could not be rushed, but in that moment, they both understood the first step had been taken, and the possibility of real love remained alive.